Hello. All right, folks, time for our second panel. Our president's panel was the first one. We got a group of black mayors coming up right now, and it's going to be a great conversation. And so we want y'all to stick around. Come on, take a seat. Y'all can see. Y'all don't got nowhere to go. Go back, sit down. We appreciate our conversation with the presidents. Now we're going to have a conversation with our mayors. And so on the panel, we have several different folks. Montgomery Mayor Stephen Reed, Birmingham Mayor, my alpha brother Randall Woodfin, Mobile, Alabama's first African-American mayor, current State House Rep Sam Jones, Huntsville, Alabama State House Representative Anthony Daniels, and business owner Shamari Figures. Gentlemen, come on up here, please. Come on up. Y'all, come on. Let's go. I guess they need some walk-up music or something, I don't know. Y'all come on. So we got 5 folk. Might need another microphone. We're going to share what's going on. Good seeing you. What's up, good brother? All righty. How you doing? Good. What's happening? All right, there you go. I think I need, let's see. You have 2 more? Got 1 more. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So let's put 1 here, and then 2 of you share mic. There you go. That's what we'll do here. Got everybody in. All right. So good to see everyone here. Glad to be here. Let's talk about money. I've always said that if you're not having a money conversation, you're not having an American conversation. You look at unemployment ticked up 3.9%, but it's below 4%. We look at what's happening in terms of with wages. We look at how the economy has changed. We look at how inflation now has dropped dramatically from the high it is. But we still are seeing a lot of our folks who believe that the economy is not good, it's worse than it always has been. How are you trying to walk that minefield? I'll start with you, Mayor Reed. Walk that minefield of you see the economic indicators on one side, but people think or perceive something that's totally different in their reality.
First, I want to thank you for hosting this, Roland. Thanks for all the work that you do each and every day around the country. I want to thank everybody who has put this on and invited us to this expo, all of my colleagues that are here at different levels of government and those that are working in the private sector as well, I think have a role to play. I think from our standpoint, in Montgomery, what we're seeing is, although we're investing in small and minority-owned businesses, it seems like the cost of doing business keeps going up, becomes harder and harder. And so we're in this, circle of trying to play catch-up as the cost of goods changes, as trade changes, all these things that are impacting their bottom lines. The second thing you all mentioned a little bit earlier is the labor shortage. That is playing a tremendous role, and so we're partnering with our 2-year colleges, we're partnering with our 4-year colleges and HBCUs, as well as our public school system. So we're trying to do the best we can from the municipal side to close that gap in terms of procurement, as well as some of the program initiatives that we have. However, I think we have to demand more from our financial institutions. I think we have to leverage our platform as mayors. Did that last year by putting $20 million in the Liberty Bank, black-owned bank based out of New Orleans, for a reason, to make sure that capital is more accessible for our black-owned business in particular that were running into a lot of obstacles with some of the legacy financial institutions. Now, since then, we've gotten some traction in talking with some of those regional banks, but there's still a lot more for us to do. And I think from my standpoint as mayor, we're searching for solutions that come from the business leaders, that come from entrepreneurs to help us in terms of policies that we can drive and programs that we can implement ourselves.
Randall, you may have heard me say the previous panel that when I had this conversation last year, because John Hope Bryan had posted a video, and he was just talking about how desolate Selma is. And I said to him, I said, John, I'm really tired of us having civil rights commemorations, and we're not focused on what they were focused on then, which was the money. And I said, we should not have another Bloody Sunday commemoration. That's on Sunday. I said, but on Friday and Saturday, it should be an economic conversation. I said, we should not allow any of those folks, especially those who used to come down, Republicans who used to come down with John Lewis, any of those folks, including the Vice President and the President, come to Selma every year for a photo op and a march across the bridge, and they're not bringing a check. Because we're still dealing with difficulty economically in that region, but also in many black areas across the country. I think we have to have a different conversation and force that conversation to change versus keep doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, well, let me say good afternoon to everybody. As Mayor Reed said, I want to thank everybody for inviting us here. Roland, we follow you, man. Thank you for your platform and your voice. And I'll say this. When I study anything related to black people and economics, I always go back to W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. When you peel it back, there was an economic blueprint for black people when you bridge what both of them were saying. You didn't have to pick a side. And around identity politics as it relates to what King and Malcolm were doing, all for social justice, racial equity, civil rights. But what Du Bois and Washington were saying, I think we've forgotten a couple things. One of the things is, as it relates to what Mayor Reed said around what's going on with the labor market today, the biggest disconnect I find today is there is no connection between employers and opportunity and our school systems across the nation and urban America. And until we get that right as far as upstream, what are we doing for the next generation? So when they finish high school, they have opportunities and they have choices. We'll never get our economic blueprint right. And so I think we have to start upstream by saying, for black people, for young black people, what are we doing to make the necessary investments in them where they feel empowered and they have opportunities, whether it's a 2-year institution after high school, whether it's a 4-year institution, whether it's trades, or whether it's straight into employment opportunities that exist. It's not a fact of people not wanting to work. They just don't know how to get there. They really don't. And so I think for mayors, for state legislators, for leaders on this panel, we're always constantly waking up every morning and going to bed every night trying to figure out how do we make more Birminghamians, residents of Montgomery, Alabamians more gainfully employed. And I think the way to do that is we have to meet them where they are. And I'm not seeing employers do that, but I'm also not seeing on the upstream, on the educational end, providing the actual exit plan for these young people so they can be gainfully employed post-high school.
Yep. Shamari, as a business owner, and I deal with this, the reality is somebody walks into the door, we need them ready day one. And I can't tell you how many people I've brought in and they've gone out, you bring in somebody else, and many of them simply are not ready. And what I argue in my business of media, because I went to a communications high school, so I was ready walking out of high school. I knew more going into Texas A&M as a freshman than seniors knew because of what I learned in the high school through my magnet school of communications in Houston. And I believe if we're talking about how do we transform education for employment, for ownership, we've got to have actual owners in relationship in high schools and colleges so folk understand what the real deal is, because you can have a theoretical understanding of how a business works, but that ain't meeting up with reality when they actually walk in. And if that person can't survive that first 90 days, then they're out. Talk about that.
So I think it's, first of all, thank you to everyone for hosting this event, to the Ball family, and to...
Hold a little bit closer. And can I get a little bit more volume on his microphone, please?
Okay.
He has a blue one. He has blue. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That better?
There you go.
All right. I also want to extend my thanks to you for moderating this panel, but also to the Ball family and everyone that had a role in putting this event together. And I think we are sitting literally in part of that solution, right? I think it is exactly events like this that we sit in here today that we don't see enough, that are not commonplace enough in black communities across this country, that offer opportunities for children to have exposure to businesses, to a variety of businesses, to people who have owned those businesses, people who have taken on careers in those businesses, who can actually give them insight and access to those opportunities. What we did, we own a business in the hospitality and service industry with the largest black-owned employer in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and what we have...
Hold on, before you go to that, what do you do?
We own...
you said hospitality. What does that mean? What do you do?
A sports bar and restaurant business in Tuscaloosa.
Got it.
We're located right, literally 100 yards down from the University of Alabama's football stadium, right on the Strip in Tuscaloosa. First black-owned business in that part of Tuscaloosa. And we have had to be intentional, very intentional, about establishing relationships, not just with high schools, but more so with our black college students going into college. We're running a very cyclical sort of hiring situation where it's college, right? So students go home for the summer and they come back. But intentionality is the key. Intentionality in reaching out to the black organizations, intentionality in reaching out to our Greek organizations, offering them opportunities not just to come in and work, but offering them opportunities to come in and leverage their time in school to actually come in and learn the management and business and operational side of the businesses. But we're just one business, right? And I think that there's a lot of truth in what...
How many employees?
It ranges between 50 and 75.
Got it.
Right, which is a medium-sized, well, you know, still considered a small business for purposes.
Federal government says small business, 499 less.
Exactly, but it presents, you know, unique challenges in the environment in which we operate. But nevertheless, we still try to give them access not to just come here and work. We want to motivate for the future, right? And that takes opportunities, and it takes insight, and it takes intentionality, primarily from business owners that want that willingness to build and develop the talent for the future. So don't come in here with the expectation that your career will begin and end as a server or as a cook or as a bartender, that you have the opportunity and pathway to come here and see behind the scenes. What does inventory look like? What does operational security look like? What do all of these factors that ultimately lead to the success of the business, what do they look like? And I think that's something that's key, and I think that's something that as a black community and a black community of business owners, that I think we all share that ideal and all embrace that idea and that concept, and I think it's events like this that can actually put us in a better place to leverage that.
I agree with that, and I will say to the organizers, and again, when I got the text right before we came up, with the last panel in this panel, and I always am very cognizant of this, you are not going to see 2 all-male panels next year. I just want to say that. Oh, I see everything. Don't think I ain't see it. Don't think I ain't see it. I see that. Sam, I want to start with you. We were talking about creating economic opportunities. We've always seen how politicians utilize their power to do so. We could talk about providing opportunities for businesses coming to the area. Think about Maynard Jackson, whose grandfather taught him the 3 B's, the ballot, the book, and the buck. And to me, this is an area where if we have black elected officials, they have to be intentional on specifically creating opportunities for black-owned businesses to build capacity. And why do I say that? Why do I ask Shamari how many employees? He said 50 to 75. Pre-COVID, we had 2.6 million black-owned businesses. 2.5 million had one employee, doing an average revenue of $54,000. And so the day I launched my show, September 4th, 2018, we had 7 people. So we were already in the top percentile of black-owned businesses from day one. And so the reality is that, unfortunately for us, nearly all of our businesses, they're not just small, they're basically one person. Those are not businesses. Those are sole proprietors. And so talk about being a mayor, but now being in the legislature, that understanding of how are you looking to build capacity for black business owners in this state?
Being a mayor, you always run into the issue.
So a little bit higher, speak a little bit higher. A little bit.
We always run into the issue of how do you create opportunities for black businesses. One of the things that we've had to do in the past here, when you build something like the $95 million government complex we have over there, we certainly wanted black businesses to participate. We had to come up with an innovative way to make that happen. So instead of bidding a $95 million contract, we bidded 26 contracts and broke it up.
Speak right to it.
26 different contracts, and kind of broke it up so people could participate.
So what you did, which was what Maynard Jackson did. Instead of having one large deal, you broke it up so somebody could be on a prime portion. They now had a prime contracting opportunity.
A lot of that came from a visit from Maynard Jackson to Mobile to talk about opportunities in Mobile and talk to me about how he created opportunities in Atlanta. And I think for the most part, most of us, when we come into the arena, we think socially. We don't really think that much economically when you first get started. Then you realize that that's the real goal that we should have. We should be creating jobs, not just looking for jobs. And that's one of the things that I think we all look for throughout our communities, regardless of what city it might be. But the importance of having black mayors like these gentlemen is that they can use innovation to change some things that have been locked into place and locked us out for many, many years. And I think that what we have to do is change our thought pattern as it relates to, sure, it's important that we address all of those social issues, but it's real important that we find some way to finance that. And the way we finance it is make sure that we are in a position to create jobs. We're in a position to lift people up who are trying to grow their businesses. And the most important thing, and I was looking at Shamari here because his father and I used to have this conversation, and the conversation was he'd always tell young people, be on time, be prepared, and be there to take advantage of opportunities. His position was, you can't take advantage of an opportunity if you're not prepared to take advantage. So I think one of the things we need to spend a lot of time on, how do we prepare young black businesses to grow? And I agree with you. When you try to put together, and I don't know if some of the other mayors have done this, we try to do it, put together a minority business directory. And when you go through that directory, you usually have more beauticians and barbers than you have anyone else in those directories. And people say, where's your minority business director? And you give them a director, and they call you back and say, well, I can't use that. I need a CPA. I need a structural engineer. I need this person or that person. And if that person is not within your area, we have to go to Birmingham and get them. so those are some of the things that have happened in the past here. Now, I think we really have some opportunities to involve people in the economy to a point where they become business owners and not just employees of other people.
See, Anthony, the reason I think while I'm talking about this is because when he talks about creativity, the thing for me is, look, 2023 is not 1973.
No.
You don't have minority set-asides. You are obviously, you have the Supreme Court decisions and all of that. But I was talking to, I remember I was telling the Illinois Governor Rob Blagojevich this, because we were having this conversation about lack of access to capital. I said, Governor, you can literally do the exact same thing Maynard Jackson did by saying, if this business has received a state contract, you should make it a requirement that of all the banks that you're putting state money in, they provide a line of credit to that company. I said, that's not racial. You can apply to anybody. I said, now you're putting millions of dollars into these banks. I said, make that a part of the deal. And he looked at me and I said, yeah, it's constitutional, it'll pass. That's the sort of thing, because part of the deal is, if you have a business, you can't float that sucker for 180 days, because in terms of how cities and counties and state pays. And so to me, that's the leverage point that folk have to look at. So when people say, well, we can't make it just for black, that's fine. But any business that let's say has a city contract or a state contract, that can be made a requirement. I can guarantee you those banks do not want the state to pull their money out of their banks because they're using that for the purposes. To me, that's what has to happen in order to sort of to change this dynamic, because the biggest thing I still see for us, people say, we need more black businesses. I said, no, we need more black businesses with capacity, because frankly, we are too small. Thoughts?
Roland, I just wanted to add that in Alabama, there's a bid process.
I think you may want to grab Randall's
that's
microphone.
Required. But in that bid process, the mayor gets the opportunities to pick financial institutions that you deal with. The thing that we had to do is tell some of the huge banks that he's not in the deal because of you. You're in the deal because of him. That changes the playing field for everybody at the table.
Go ahead.
So, to your point, well, thank you again for having us here, and certainly appreciate the Ball family for this. But I'll tell you some of the things that we're doing to try to leverage black wealth in the state of Alabama, and some of the pieces of legislation that we've attached language in. For example, the prison construction bill, where they took $400 million of COVID dollars to invest in building 2 mega prisons. Well, while we were voting against this piece of legislation, we were able to negotiate language that addresses prevailing ethnic minority. And the prevailing ethnic minority in the state of Alabama are African Americans. And so what this did was it changed the dynamics of just saying minority. It removed the white woman from this language.
Who is the greatest beneficiary of all affirmative action programs across America?
Absolutely. And so what we're finding is it's giving us an opportunity to leverage the opportunity for the construction project to then leverage this in other agencies.
Okay, so I want you to explain that, though. We say we change the language. That means that say it again?
Prevailing ethnic minority.
Got what?
African Americans.
No.
So set-asides for contract opportunities for the prison construction project.
Okay.
So what you have is you have a group set up to only target African American owned businesses to lead various projects within the overall prison scope.
That language was accepted?
Yes. It wasn't challenged. And so in
Alabama?
Well, they didn't have the votes to really move it, and so I was able to leverage that in order to give our folks an opportunity. But we voted no on it, but we were able to leverage that and bake that inside of the legislation.
Okay.
And I really got the language from Stephen's father. He taught me about the prevailing ethnic minority language is a way to really get a carve out for African Americans. Right now, we are the prevailing ethnic minority. Now, later on, we may not be. And so right now, we're living for right now. And so what's happening is you're beginning to see more African American businesses get certain aspects of the prison construction project. We also baked in a seat on the authority, the finance authority, so that we have a seat on the finance authority so that we're able to leverage that from a bonding capacity in other areas. We're not going for subbing something else to someone that may be a minority-owned businesses, and then it goes back to the company that originally had the contract and their buddies. No, we're intentional about it. We have a project manager that's assigned to this particular project and its execution. And so we get reports every month on the progress of it. You're not going to do quarterly reports. They want to do annual reports. I wouldn't allow them to do the annual reports, so we did quarterly and we do bi-weekly meetings to get an update as to what's going on. Because at the end of the day, their favorite line is, we weren't able to find anyone. Well, we're not accepting that. And so right now, you're finally seeing some of our African-American businesses make money. Now, there may be challenge later on, but I will tell you, they are making money. So what this does is gives us, and I put accountability on them, make certain that you're Mr. Joe, that's been a brick mason for 25 years, may not have the capacity to take on the full project, but he can take on pieces of the project, and it's not lowest bid. Lowest bid is what get a lot of our businesses in trouble because they're not able to float their employees for the 90 days or 120 days, and we also have a call.
Or also the larger business, because they have more capacity, they can bid lower because they've got multiple projects, and so they squeeze out a smaller firm.
And we also, from a bonding capacity, we altered the language to where the prime is able to use their bonding to be able to allow the smaller business to take advantage of it. So it's not requiring the smaller business to have the full bonding capacity in order to take on the contract.
Randall, have you had to have conversations with some black folks in Birmingham to say, look, all y'all small, but 2 or 3 you together is much larger? I spoke at a black chamber deal, and I'm sitting there, and they awarded 3 different PR firms, and I was sitting there, and I was like, I guarantee you all 3 combined ain't doing $500,000 in billing. And I said, why y'all got 3? But if you have one large firm, now you don't have 3 back offices, you don't have 3 different, and because it frustrates me in the black-owned media space, because before I launched my show, I went and met with every major black-owned media company, and not one wanted to partner. What I'm doing, none of them are doing. None of them do remote broadcasting. None of them do a daily news show. So it wasn't like it was any competition. But too many of us love, and I'm gonna say I ain't got a problem. If you got a problem with it, that ain't my problem. Too many of us are enamored with seeing CEO on a card, and we got a bunch of small businesses with a whole bunch of business cards in our pockets and not enough business.
So capacity is the root issue, and it does prevent cities like Birmingham, cities like Montgomery, and cities like Mobile, in this case cities like Huntsville as well, from being in a position to award bigger contracts to minorities, i.e. black folk. I'm just going with the Black Expo.
I need more audio on red. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
So for the last 2 years, there's been a very, very intentional conversation I and my economic development team have been having with contractors. We just completed a minority report and a diversity study on our capacity to engage minority businesses. And one hasn't been done in decades. And we blew the dust off the old one, and we came back to the table and said it's time to do a new one, a disparity study. From this disparity study, we've uncovered so many things related to how the city of Birmingham engages minority businesses, particularly black businesses. And capacity is literally the #1 issue. And so my language has been very, very plain. 2 hats. In my left hand, my hat is serving as mayor of the city, and my right hand being one of 9 board members that serve on our conventions bureau. Our conventions bureau just completed a new stadium a few years ago. They reimagined and redeveloped the basketball arena, and now a new amphitheater is getting ready to come on the same site. And so for all 3 projects, I have said this exact same thing. You're not going to get a contract coming by yourself. You need to come together. I'm not telling you to lose your identity. I'm telling you all to come together and submit a package together. And if you do, there is nobody that won't award y'all.
Right.
And you're talking, if they come together, you're talking more than 33%. You come by yourself, then everybody combined by themselves may get you to 20 to 25% participation, maybe.
Right.
But if you come together and submit a package together, the GC got to deal with you, because in the wording of what we want in our contract, whether it's the convention side or the city side, and especially on the city side, the disparity studies complete. So now we have ammo to push back on anything the state says illegal. This is what we're looking for.
Right.
Got to come together. I'm telling, I can look all y'all in this audience in your faces. They got to come together. They don't have enough bonding capacity to come as an individual or individual organization. They got to come together. If they come together, I'm telling you, everybody's eating.
See, Stephen, this is a literal problem in Black America. And I just think that so many people are enamored with saying, no, I'm the boss. Yeah, you're the boss of something that is so small, you literally can't hire folk, and you have really no future. And it drives me absolutely crazy. And that, the night before Dr. King was killed, in his sermon at Mason Temple on April 3rd, 1968, he said Black people individually are poor, yet collectively represent one of the world's largest economies. He said, if we move as a collective, then we can actually change our community.
Well, I think that what we're talking about here is being discussed intentionally among mayors. I'm the first vice president of the African American Mayors Association. Randall serves on our board of directors. And when you consider that the 4 largest cities right now have Black mayors for the first time ever, that's significant. But when we're talking amongst ourselves, whether it be through text threads or informal conversations, we're all talking about how to move the agenda economically. A lot of us are in states where our legislative help is in the minority, in most cases in the super minority, whether that's Texas, whether that's Arkansas, South Carolina, obviously Alabama, Mississippi. So we have a lot of challenges at the state level, but what we're trying to do is to have the economic conversation and the frank conversation with entrepreneurs, with business leaders about the power of merging and acquisitions. I think far too often, Roland, not enough people understand how a lot of these businesses have grown, whether they be law firms, architectural engineering firms, IT firms, and I don't quite understand how we cannot show them that pattern. They didn't all grow just from, the back of somebody's garage just by themselves.
Well, because it's literally not on the agenda of the organizations. I probably have spoken at 12 to 15 Black chambers of commerce events across the country. I've been a keynote speaker. And I purposely get the book and I go through all the workshops. Never have I seen M&A, mergers and acquisitions, on the agenda. Not one. When I spoke to the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc. Several years ago, I told Ron Busby, I said, these were all the leaders of all the chambers. I said, you have got to stop meeting and not having M&A conversations. And so it's never discussed. That's why you don't see it. It's literally never even talked about.
Well, I think if we can then soften the language, and what I mean by that is talk about partnerships and collaborations. Because when we're talking about the amount of dollars that are coming out of the state of Alabama.
No. You're on the right conversation. It has to be mergers and acquisitions.
Well, but they have to see that it's not what I'm giving up, it's what I'm gaining, is my point. And I'm gaining access to greater levels of opportunity.
And more money.
And no question. And I think so sometimes whether it's National Black MBA, which is just in Houston, or whether it's the Black Economic Alliance or ELC, any of those groups, I guess we need that clarity to be shared, because I think from the government standpoint, those of us understand that the legacy of Maynard Jackson, Marion Barry, often left out of this conversation, and so many others that have really pushed that and implemented it, that those in our current generation are trying to follow that blueprint. And so I think the key piece here is for our business owners, our entrepreneurs, to understand that it's okay to partner. It's okay to team up. It's okay after 3 years or 4 or 5 years to understand what may be out there and what we can do collectively together to go after state contracts, local contracts, and certainly federal, but also private sector business as well.
Shamari, it was interesting. During the Obama administration, Department of Labor, Department of Transportation, they had a conference. I keynoted the conference, and I had this was in my speech. Sister walks up to me, and she said, for the past 3 years, my business partner and I have been preparing our business to sell. She said, it never dawned on us to go buy. And she said, after your speech, I called my business partner and said, stop what we're doing. We need to go look at acquiring something. But that has to be an intentional conversation that we have, because you're not, the days of being John H. Johnson, launching Ebony Magazine, and 65 years later, you're the largest black-owned media company. That's gone. That ain't happening anymore. You're not going to be able to achieve capacity without merging, acquiring, without having joint partnerships. And to me, that is a huge problem for many of our black-owned businesses, and why we're sort of stuck in terms of where we are.
I think it's can you guys hear me okay? I think it's a symptom of a broader problem or condition, and that is black business education, right? I think it's they don't know because they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. But I think this touches on a number of issues that that everyone up here collectively has addressed, in that just because you are a business owner does not mean that you know how to own a business. You
might want to repeat that one.
Just because you are a business owner does not mean that you know how to own a business. And I don't exclude myself from this, right? We had to learn. It is a complex process. I had the luxury of having resources and examples in my life and professional networks that were able to serve as a launching point for me. But in this black community, everyone does not have that same luxury, right? We're not as networked. We're not as tied to not only one another, but to the broader business communities to be able to even have these sorts of conversations, right, about how you run a business, right? And so when you talk mergers and acquisitions, I think that that's a symptom of that issue. I think it is something that you have to analyze at a very micro level and almost at an academic level. And when we talk about resources that black businesses need, it's not always just financial resources. It's the educational resources. It's the know-how issues. It's the networking issues. It's the who can I call, right? Because one thing that you see, unfortunately, very commonly in the black business community is the lack of the ability to expand, right? Clarence Ball knows what it's like to expand. Greg Calhoun knew what it was like to expand. But I don't know that collectively we can think of any other black business owners in the state of Alabama who've had that capacity to expand, right, and that to that degree. And I think that ultimately, I think all of this ultimately boils down to business education, and it's uncomfortable conversations. It is, because you as black business owners, and I see several out here in the audience, you have to humble yourself to acknowledge what you don't know and ask. And so I think that what cannot be lost ultimately in the conversation of access to resources, because we need access to resources. You got to have the money, you got to have the funding, and you need it at every single phase. And government involvement is often focused on the first phase, the startup phase, without paying attention to the sustainability phase, the lifeline funding, the expansion funding, right? They're all different life cycles, in the business life cycle. But what cannot be lost in the conversation about resources is this conversation about actually educating business owners on how to stand up, establish, and operate the best business that they can.
So I'm going to do this here. So how many people, if you are a or have been a public worker, meaning teacher, firefighter, officer, work for the city, county, state, federal government, school district, doesn't matter, stand up. All right, y'all sit down, y'all sit down. I'm talking about y'all. No, I want y'all to stay standing. I'm going to stay standing. So now I want y'all to look around the room and look at each other. What you're looking at right now is actually the largest collection of black wealth in America. Now you're going to take a seat. Here's what I mean by that. Sam, I'll go to you on this one. I see all these people talking about, man, we need to do something to get Silicon Valley, to get private equity, to change how they do business. And for years I have been saying they get their money from pension funds. I said, you change that, they'll change. We've seen the state of New York and other states mandate what black law firms are you using, accounting firms, who are your partners, and if you don't, you can't manage our money. One of the things that I think that we also have to be doing is educating our people to say, if you want to change that, put the pressure by saying, y'all invest in our money. Private equity can't do what it does without pension funds. Pension funds drive Wall Street. Are you seeing more black state legislators have that conversation? Because when you change the money at that level, it changes here. Because without pension fund money, none of those folks can do what they do.
There have been numerous efforts to address that. And I guess it depends on the structure of the pension fund. Alabama's pension fund is very active. Most of what you see downtown here is a result of the Alabama pension fund and public employees. As far as them trying to leverage things for black businesses, I've not seen that in any way other than them requiring some construction standards or some participation in their projects. But as far as them having a target to elevate black businesses or involve black business, I've not seen that in the state pension fund in Alabama yet.
See, Anthony, what I'm trying to get at it, because I think, and so historically when we are having this conversation, we focus on construction, we focus on engineering. Billions are being spent professional services. The law firms, the accounting firms, I mean, we can go on and on and on. And to me, if we're going to change the game, what we say is, if you want to come here and access our pension funds, who are the other businesses that you're using? When I'm arguing, when I'm hitting companies on my show, I'm not just saying I want to see what you're spending on black-owned media. I want to know, you're hiring transportation companies, catering companies, PR companies, event planning companies, audio-visual companies. I want to see black-owned companies up and down that roster there, and not just how they always think, oh, no, we built something, we found a company. No. You're spending billions in all these areas. Are you using black people in these areas? The reason I think the pension fund is an underutilized focus is because, what do they say? Why do you rob banks? That's where the money's at. If at that level, if black lawmakers make it perfectly clear, y'all ain't come and get this money unless you're making some substantive changes here, that to me could have a huge impact across the board for black economic development.
I think you're absolutely right.
To Sam's point, you're absolutely correct. Now, what we have been able to do, despite being a super minority, is there are certain pieces of legislation where we negotiate. Right now, we're dealing with gaming, which is Sam leads that effort. And in the gaming legislation that we're crafting, those are requirements all the way down to the vending services and ownership. And in facilities in communities where they're looking to put a gaming facility, we're requiring that it be reflective of the community that they're going in, and looking at all of those services, whether it's the machines, whether it's the technology aspect, And then we're starting to have those conversations, at least the Black Caucus part of our caucus is having conversations even with companies that lobby us. Yes. That message will be a lot clearer to me if it was someone that looked like me. And so we're trying to leverage that at the various levels where we have the negotiating power, or it gives us an opportunity to, I would say, make it very difficult to advance the legislative agenda for the other side and have long days and long nights. And so we're able to leverage that through a defensive strategy. But my final point, we have what they call a public-private partnership, the Innovation Corporation. And in that legislation, we were able to require that the minority leader in the House and the minority leader in the Senate serve on this public-private board equal to the number of Republicans that's on this board. And we've given out approximately $20 million to tech companies across the state of Alabama, which requires at least 40% to be ethnic minority owned. And so we're leveraging those type of things that have been baked into legislation to require it so that it outlasts us or outlives us. And so we have a great team to where they're the tree shakers, I'm the jelly maker. And sometimes it's vice versa. But it worked for us because of certain pieces of legislation that they don't have the majority because of whether it's a conservative pact to where they're against certain things, whether it's gambling or alcohol. And so we use that as leveraging points to advance some of the status or opportunities for the black community to be able to benefit from on all levels.
I saw you shaking your head, Randall, because you were like, yep, I know what that feels like. Because I think about Mitchell Titus, largest black-owned accounting firm in the country. Again, when these deals are done, it's not something we're thinking about. Reverend Jackson always understood that. I remember when he was hitting Verizon, he was hitting AT&T, and a number of these other companies, where they were doing massive bond deals. And they were saying, well, who's running the bond deal? Again, who are the law firms? Who are the accounting firms? Professional services are huge. John Rogers of Era Capital, John says, stop using supplier diversity. He said, no, use business diversity. When you start thinking about all these publicly traded companies, when I've been hitting PepsiCo and Clorox and all these different companies, I'm sitting here saying, I want to know, don't just come to me, and I make it perfectly clear. Don't come to me, because whenever we do meetings with them, it's always amazing. We'll do a meeting with them, and they'll have the foundation person, the DEI person, and I will say, does your DEI person, your foundation person meet when Disney come here? And so that's part of the game. And I think what we have to do is make a level of demands that's totally different, because when we now expand the pool of now services, we're now talking about billions of dollars, and we know black-owned businesses are more than likely going to hire black people, are more than likely going to support black institutions, are more to give money back to HBCUs or to their high schools and their churches, and then to other organizations, fraternities and sororities. And so when black politicians use that political power to hit the economic power, that has a massive change in black America.
So earlier I went deep into the archives of talking about Du Bois in Washington, but Mayor Reed has already mentioned, it's worth mentioning again. The blueprint we study as mayors, particularly as black mayors, is easy to see what Maynard did, what Marion did, and to some extent what Washington did in Chicago as well. Like, we study these guys.
Hatcher, Stokes, that group of black, right.
We study them to the nine. I think they scared so many people that even in a state like Alabama, they says you can't even do set-asides no more as it relates to bidding, right? So we're blocked out, but not as it relates to professional services. So I go back to Richard Arrington is the first black mayor of Birmingham, 79 and 99, and I literally had asked him, hey, how did you create, what was your blueprint, what was your model, how did you create black wealth? And he doesn't even hesitate to say it was through professional services. So as it relates to the outside law firms that represented the city of Birmingham, as it relates to the accounting firms who did Birmingham's books, as it relates to all the other professional services, all right, our administration is going to do the same thing. We're going to level up on professional services. And as of today, we've had the same black accounting firm in the last 4 years who's never had the opportunity. Not just black owned, but black woman owned. It's never had that opportunity. We're providing an opportunity. She's doing an amazing job. Our organization's doing an amazing job. And as long as I'm there, we're going to keep doing that, not only to support her, but other black-owned businesses.
The folks who are listening who don't understand, and again, because I covered city council, I sat there and watched it. There's a lowest bidder process, there's a professional services process, where it doesn't have to be the lowest bidder. And so a lot of people don't understand how a council, or even if you have a city manager in form of government, they can pick who gets it, and they don't have to be lowest bid.
That is correct. And look, I'm unapologetic about being intentional about how we engage professional services. The city of Birmingham, 3 out of 4 citizens are black. So when we are giving out tax dollars as it relates to services to the city, those are tax dollars represented by those same people. We need to be intentional about who's getting those tax dollars, because I want to be very clear. There are folk in the state of Alabama who don't want that. And so with our platform at City Hall, unapologetic about it. And I know that reporters in this room is going to talk about it and write about it. I'm okay with that, because anytime I get to say that publicly, I want to put people on notice about what City Hall's role in creating and being intentional about economic opportunity. I told you about 2 hats. Here's a hat I didn't tell you about, but you brought it up. I'm also the president of our pension. So I preside over our pension monthly. And I realized when you had everybody stand up as it relates to all these various public service opportunities, there's an overwhelming amount of wealth embedded in pensions. The beauty of the conversation as president, I don't have to drive it. I facilitate the conversation and lead the conversation among my colleagues. But you damn better believe my colleagues are asking these questions when vendors are coming to us saying, we want the opportunity to represent your pension board. All right, tell us about who you partner with.
What your board look like?
I don't even have to do the work. My colleagues are doing it for me. I mean, they're leading the charge. I don't have to slide them a note and say, ask this or any of that. They know the right question to ask for the people who want our pension business. And believe it or not, there is a lot of money just in the city of Birmingham's pension. I know it's in yours. I know it's in RSA's. And everybody who has stand up, I know it's in theirs as well. And so that conversation, thank you for using your platform to talk about that, because an overwhelming amount of wealth is in our pensions.
It literally is.
It took me a couple years to figure that out.
It literally is the largest concentration of black wealth in America. And Stephen, and when I first started talking about it, people were like, dude, what are you doing? I'm like, you don't understand. Wall Street cannot operate without pension funds. And so the power literally rests in the hands. So imagine if thousands of black workers, right now there's a lawsuit in New Jersey of a black-owned pension fund suing the governor, the Democratic governor, Phil Murphy, and BlackRock because they were being frozen out. BlackRock controls 75% of the federal pension fund. So when you look at the amount of money in this country, nearly 90, I think the number is 97% of the money, no, 98.5% of the money in this country is controlled by white America, meaning private equity, all the different firms like that. So this is the power. This is the power to be able to say, no, we can change this game, because they need the money to be able to go do their deals.
Well, I think for us, it's about leveraging the platforms and positions that we have now, local, state, and federal, with the CBC, with the NBCSL, and other organizations that are out there to push for full participation by entrepreneurs and business owners from Mobile to Michigan. I think we have to have that conversation. And I'll just use a recent example. I'm going to use two. I just got reelected in August without the support of any majority white law firms. Now, I was told by a major business owner in the city that they were not going to support me because, and they didn't, they held true to this promise, because I had them share, I didn't say take all, share legal services with black law firms. Now, I didn't say take all, and I didn't get any money from law firms. Now, we'll have a sit down about that coming up. But that's kind of what we deal with, but we have to be intentional about it. When we put $20 million in Liberty Bank, you know, it was important for us not only just to make that statement, but it was important to show other banks what they weren't doing. And I think when it comes to pension funds, we have to make sure that we're doing the same thing with the RSA, because I do believe there is more room to grow with the RSA, Retirement Systems of Alabama, for those who are not familiar with that, in terms of how they invest their money and where and with who they invest their money. And then we got to look at who's managing the fund. Do we have black fund managers involved at a level that they should be?
Because the numbers actually show, matter of fact, when Obama was president, TARP funds, I got called to a meeting in the Treasury Department. I'm sitting with two brothers, and they said, tell me, black and minority firms outperformed white firms in the management of TARP funds. Me, I went, cool. That mean they get more money to manage? Everybody going quiet. And I was like, why in the hell everybody quiet? Where I come from, if you do a better job, you now get a bigger cut of the pie. The data actually shows that black and minority private equity firms do a better job of managing firms than white firms, but they literally get a small piece of the pie because they're essentially capped. Those are fact. The data is there. They do a better job, but they're simply not getting access to more of the dollars.
And again, I think for us, we'll celebrate the Montgomery bus boycott on December the 1st. And obviously, we understand the social and political significance, but we don't understand the economic significance of what that boycott did, right? And that was why it broke the city. And when you look back at the papers from the mayor and the papers from the commission form of government at that time, you see they're tracking those dollars go down. And they say, what are we going to do? How long can we sustain this? And so I think from our perspective, we've got to understand that there is leverage, there is power politically to implement some of these changes at a high level for pension funds and for investment that reverberate throughout our communities. And those are the things that start to close those wealth gaps. Those are things that start to close the gaps in terms of what black-owned businesses make versus similar-sized white-owned businesses and others. Those are things we have to do, and those are the ideas that I know as mayors we're talking about, from Kansas City and St. Louis to Atlanta to Augusta, Savannah, Montgomery, Birmingham, and Jackson.
And I want to make it so plain for the person sitting here. I know somebody sitting here going like, man, they are talking about stuff I don't know what the hell are they talking about. But so let me make it plain to you how this thing works. I launched the show September 4th, 2018. We are profitable March 2020. At the end of 2020, my accountants are saying, you're going to have to pay probably, you had way too good of a year. You probably going to pay about $700,000 in taxes. I was like, no, we about to buy a whole bunch of stuff. Part of the deal was me taking some of that money and creating a $25,000 scholarship at my high school in Houston. We're only talking about, we did $3 million in revenue. So the point I'm trying to make is, when you grow capacity in black businesses and all of a sudden you're now doing 10, 20, 30, maybe 50, whatever millions in profit, the bottom line is you're looking to place that money elsewhere in order not to have to pay taxes on it. So when we're fighting for these issues, that money comes right back into our community in scholarships, in donations to organizations. And so we're talking billions of dollars. And so that's why I wanted to have this specific conversation, because we don't talk about this and realize how it literally can change our communities. Go ahead.
Speaking of billions, corporate America, I think it's a little bit past B. B is in billions. But when George Floyd was killed, corporate America pledged
Anywhere from 30 to $120 billion in commitments.
Roland, we're still looking for that money, sir. It's been 3 years. We're still looking for that money.
Right, and I incorporate this. I've spoken to numerous HBCUs. I specifically said to Mark Morial, the National Urban League, and to the NAACP, and to the U.S. Black Chambers, Inc., and to the Executive Leadership Council, Mike Heidel. I said, y'all have to be tracking this and demanding the companies, because what I've said is, stop letting companies come get the seal of approval from the Urban League and the NAACP and all of our groups, and again, showing up with large checks in small amounts. They have to atone for that, but those were press release announcements, and they were not real. And look, I have no problem with when I met with General Motors and we challenged them on their lack of advertising. We were with Deborah Wall, who was being the chief marketing officer. I said, let me explain to you, I ain't giving you no credit for a press release. I credit you based upon direct deposits. So if I don't see a direct deposit, we got a problem, and I'm gonna use my voice to call y'all out. And I said, and let me be real clear with y'all. We ain't got to call for a massive boycott of General Motors. I said, if I knock off 1% of market share, all y'all losing y'all jobs. And so we have to actually, to the point, learn to understand what our power is. And so people lose it. And with, last point with this, before I get a final comment for all of them, when you mentioned the law firms, how are things the same as they were then? When Maynard Jackson left the city of Atlanta, as the mayor, not a single major law firm, white shoe law firm in Atlanta, would hire him in their law firm as partner, because they were pissed because of what he did for black business. So how they are penalizing, what they did to you was exactly what they did to Maynard Jackson when he was the mayor of Atlanta, because they said, how dare you reward black businesses by using the power of the mayor's office. And that's why he had to start the bonding company with a Chicago law firm and not a law firm in Atlanta. Final comment.
Listen, I think at the end of the day, black business ownership is a beautiful thing. It's a critical thing, and it's something that I think everybody should aspire to support in every way that we can. For all of the problems that we identify today, we sure ain't where we were when my daddy started his first business, when my mother started her first business, when my uncle started their businesses, when fellow panelists, families started their businesses. It's a lot that we can do. It's a lot that has been done, and it's a lot more that we can do. At the core of it, though, at the core of it all, is how do we, here in Black America, how do we support us? When we have the opportunity to spend and support and host events and do the things that businesses need to thrive, which at the end of the day is money, it's a business, are we going there? Are we recommending that other people go there?
No, break it down. Are we using Black Food Company, the people who print the materials, the badges, the banners, the whole, everything that you have to be asking that question. Did you try to get a black firm for all of this business?
Absolutely. At every granular level, we have to support us. We do. In every respect of black business ownership. That goes from networking to capital access to the business education that I was speaking of earlier. We have to support us. That goes at the municipal level, at the state level. Every step along the way, the support and the vitality of black businesses and the sustainability of black businesses begins and ends in the black community. And so we have to support one another.
I just really want to take the opportunity to say that I am extremely impressed with these two mayors. It's an awesome job to be mayor and addressing some of the issues you're addressing, how you are providing for black businesses and the growth of people in the black community. It was a little different in my time. And I think now you're really focused on economics, something that we were really focusing on rights at that time. So you're really focusing on some other things. But I would just say this.
Oh, this right, the right to get paid. Go ahead.
I would just say that we have to realize that the same thing it took to put these guys where they are, it takes the same thing to keep them there, the same effort. So let's not forget that. Sometimes I think what we do is we say, okay, we got one now, and we don't go back to the polls anymore. We don't. We just think we're at ease in Zion. And they can tell you that there's always somebody there who does not want you there. So please keep that in mind as we move forward as a community. There's a lot that we can do. There's a lot more that we have to do, and we can only do it together. So thank you. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you being here in Mobile. Mobile is a city where this has done a lot for us. To have you here and to talk about what's happening in your cities, everyone here. Shamari, knew him as a little boy in my yard, and Anthony, who's our minority leader in the legislature. Just thank all of you for being here today.
Thank you again, Roland. Thank the Ball family for what they're doing. I will leave you with one statistic. 40% of black-owned businesses went under the first year of COVID and hadn't come back. The other thing that we have to understand, I'm a small business owner, but in healthcare, the reason you don't see primary care physicians or specialists in black communities is because the zip code that they're under, the reimbursement rates are lower in those zip codes, and it's almost difficult, it's impossible for them to be able to survive in those communities. And so I think that at some point, we have to start taking these folks to the courts again. Everything that we've ever gotten has been through the courts, and that doesn't change right now.
Say that. Yeah, we're literally having a conversation right now about filing a class action lawsuit against every major advertising firm for how they're cheating black-owned business out of the $322 billion spent on advertising. Absolutely.
So I tend to quote a lot of rap songs and rap lyrics, and if I had a final word from you, it would be from an artist named by the name of Chad Butler, aka Pimp C. In this song called "Knocking Down Doors," he talks about as long as we stay divided, they're gonna run the South. And he goes on to say, "I got a bread truck, you can get off these crumbs." Professional services can only take you so far. But as it relates to bidding and going after big contracts, if you go at it as individuals and your small baby team, you're only going to get crumbs. If you come together, you can eat from an entire bread truck.
I mean, I think it's all been said here. I want to thank the Ball family for spearheading this. I want to thank everybody that's been involved. I want to wish everyone a great time here at the Port City Classic. I think when we party with a purpose, we got to remember that there's a purpose with the party. And the one thing I would say is that to have the leadership and brain trust that not only is on this panel, but has been part of previous panels, I think it's something we should not take for granted. It's a tremendous opportunity, and if you're not in the place, then sometimes you miss that information. So I just want everyone that's watching, be a Roland show and whatnot, have a great time, but let's be about the business. There'll be a time to party. There's always time to have a good time, but we got to be about the business. We're going to move these things forward. It takes more than black mayors. It takes more than black legislators. It takes more than black businesses and black media. It takes a collaboration among the community to really start to chip away at these things that we know have been plaguing our communities for too long. So Roland, I thank you for bringing these topics up and really getting us to focus and continuing the advocacy work from the standpoint that you use this platform for, because it benefits all of us directly and indirectly. So thank you as well.
Appreciate it. My final comments are this, and I need you to understand why black-owned media matters. If it wasn't for John H. Johnson and then Earl Graves, you're not seeing the number of African Americans sitting on corporate boards of directors. The work of Reverend Jackson as well. If you're not, when you look at where we stand, obviously going through the 20th century, black-owned media played the huge role that making the clarion call, whether it was Chicago Defender, whether it was Pittsburgh Courier, whether it was Houston Defender. We can go all around the country. Papers in Birmingham, papers all over. Where we are today, the conversation that we just had. I spent 6 years at CNN. I'm telling you right now, this conversation will never be at CNBC or at Bloomberg or any of those networks. And so what the conversation that we've had isn't just for the room, because what often happens is I'll have some people, they'll say, man, the room should have been packed. I don't worry about a room being packed because we've been live streaming the whole conversation. By me owning the network, we can restream the conversation. It's going to be there. There are more people who are actually watching than who people sitting in this room. And so we have to also support black-owned media, because as the first nation's black newspaper said, March 16, 1827, we wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. But the support also has to be economic. I have people go, man, we would love for you to do this here, without understanding that box that's sitting on that chair right there, that's a LU 800, which is the top of the line live streaming box. If ABC or NBC or CBS was here, they would have the exact same box. That box is $20,000. We own 2 of them. The rack mount unit that it sends to the office is $40,000. I say that because we have to also understand his business. Folk got to get out of the mentality of can't get a hookup. We don't ask for hookups when we go to Walmart. We pay what the hell that tag says. And so if we're going to talk about how do we build and grow and sustain our businesses, then we also have to get out of a hookup mentality, which means folks got to stop asking for the hookup for tickets to the Classic. I'm being very clear. I'm telling you. So this is literally a state of mind. So when people wonder why many of our institutions are broke, it's because we are not willing to pay full service for it, yet we will pay full service for non-black stuff every single day. That's what I want to leave y'all with. Appreciate y'all panel. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank to all of you. I'll be live on my show. I'll be a little late, but I'll be live in 15 minutes. Y'all take care. I think we'll take a group photo down front, and then, so just similar right here, and then we'll line right up in front. DJ, hit it.
Don't hit it. What an epic day it has been here at the Port City Classic. The events began this morning with over 500 students being exposed to entrepreneurial and education. So we're excited to wrap up this wonderful day. We want to thank those who've been here today, our guests, our vendors, our sponsors who made this event happen, our moderators, our panelists, the Convention Center team. We also want to thank DJ Sham for keeping us going today. You did a phenomenal job. We want to thank Felicia Turner and her team for doing a great job as well. This day was impactful. We want to bring your minds to our happy hour that begins at 5 p.m. tonight, right on these doors. The doors open for D.L. Hewley at 7 o'clock. The show begins at 8, and the comedy after hour will happen at 10 o'clock until. Thank you guys for being here. We look forward to seeing everyone at tomorrow's game, and we look forward to seeing everyone again next year at the Black Business Expo. DJ Sham, take us out, ma'am.
Check this out. We about to do this getting ready. Check this out. Come on. Getting ready. I say, girl, don't you do that. I say, girl, don't you do that. I say, boy, don't you do that. I say, boy, don't you do that. I say, y'all, don't y'all do that. I say, boy, don't y'all do that. Getting ready. Check this out. Talk that stuff now, roll with it. Talk that stuff now, roll with it. Talk that stuff now, roll with it. Talk that stuff now, walk it like a dog. Walking like a dog, walking like a dog, walking like a dog. Walking like a dog, walking like a dog, walking like a. Now take your dog for a walk. I'm walking like a saver, like a bouncer, like a tweaker, like a walker, like a saver, like a bouncer, like a yeah. Walking like a saver, like a bouncer, like a tweaker, like a walker, like a saver. Monkey on the stick, monkey on the stick, a monkey on the stick. Yeah, monkey on the stick, a monkey on the stick. Yeah, monkey on the stick, a monkey on the stick. Yeah, monkey on the stick, and now serve it. Yeah, serve it. I want to serve it. Do the sissy boo. Do the sissy boo. Sissy boo. The sissy do the sissy do the sissy boo. I do the sissy boo. A sissy boo. The sissy do the sissy do it get some. Do the get some. Do the get some. I 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 do the get. You know what? Pick it up and walk, bam, hit it rock, pop, bam. Pick it up and walk, bam, hit it rock, pop, bam. Pick it up and walk, bam, hit it rock, pop, bam. Pick it up and walk. Now break it, break it, yeah. Break it. I want you break it. Do the game now.